And of course, to live in any European city at that time and not belong to a religious grouping is really is to make you a complete loner.
Well, he was a bit of a homo sacer. I mean, you can use this sort of Latin category to describe a kind of a person without description, without confession. Uh, some say that Baruch Spinoza, in this way, sort of inaugurates the modern tendency of irrationation, right? The sort of losing of identity, becoming a radical atheist, a bit of a man from nowhere. And we can also detect in Spinoza's philosophy, which was mostly written in the later after excommunication period, these sort of elements of, well, neutrality or non-rootedness, this kind of a universality which will become so characteristic of so many modern philosophers after him.
You mentioned that he becomes a radical atheist, but one of the phrases that is always associated with Spinoza is this phrase, Deus sive natura, Deo, God or nature. But sive in Latin is an unusual word. It means,
Us,
yeah, as
God as
God
nature.
as nature, or you can use the word God or you can use the word. So what does it mean to say God stroke nature?
Well, first of all, I don't believe that Spinoza was a radical atheist. There is a line of reception of Spinoza that fosters this kind of interpretation, uh, especially grounded in the commentaries of the free thinkers of the 18th century who took up Spinoza as their sort of main master and precursor. I actually think that Spinoza was a deeply believing man, although it is very difficult to identify his type of religiosity. And what you just mentioned, this Deus sive natura, God as nature, God like nature, well, is a phrase that actually gave a rise to a completely, well, say, new type of modern religion that became a kind of a grounding religion of Freemasons, uh, a kind of a that was later on called esoteric monotheism. Esoteric monotheism, a kind of a philosophic faith for which Spinoza delivered the foundation. How can we understand this notion? Well, many Jewish thinkers, truly Jewish thinkers, would say that with this phrase, Baruch Spinoza completely annuls his Jewish origins, that you cannot find a statement less Jewish or less in accordance with Judaic faith than actually this one, the phrase that equalizes God and nature, that sort of says that God amounts to the whole of nature. This is the so-called pantheism accusation that was leveled against Spinoza very early on, and actually became kind of a very influential trend within the 18th, 19th, and 20th century philosophy. The kind of a staple association of Spinoza's philosophy is always pantheism, which means you cannot get further from the revelation, from the Jewish revelation of God as something radically separate from nature or even opposed to nature. So some people like Hermann Cohen, a very influential 20th century Jewish philosopher, would say that with this statement, Baruch Spinoza just breaks radically with all his Jewish heritage. But there are also some who say that not at all, that actually if you read the sources Spinoza read himself, the mostly Spanish Kabbalists of the preceding centuries, late medieval and early modern centuries, uh, there will be quite a lot of speculations on the God as the kind of fountain of life or the fountain of being that can be named nature, but obviously not the nature the way we observe it, but the so-called natura naturans in Latin. That is the nature as the creative force that underlies everything that exists. And there are Kabbalistic gematrias. Gematria is the kind of a calculation of words and numbers that actually show that the sum of letters that constitutes the Hebrew word Elohim is exactly the same as the sum of that constitutes the Hebrew word Teva, which means nature. So there is this kind of a equality or parallel between God and nature already indicated in Kabbalah.
So what you're saying is that